The clang of iron doors echoes down a dark concrete corridor. Every step a guard takes reverberates like a warning. Inside these walls, fear isn't an occasional visitor. It's the permanent resident. Most prisons are built to contain society's most violent offenders. But every once in a while, a single inmate stands apart. Someone so cunning, so ruthless, that even the people paid to control them feel a chill when their name is mentioned. These are not just criminals. They are legends of intimidation, capable of bending the rules of the toughest penitentiaries to their will. Picture a maximum security guard, trained to deal with hardened felons, admitting that one prisoner kept him awake at night, or an entire cell block falling silent when a certain inmate walks by. This isn't fiction. Across the world, there are men and women whose reputations are so dark that fellow prisoners step aside, and officers tighten their grip on their radios the moment they approach. Why are these individuals so terrifying? It's not just the brutality of their original crimes, although those alone would shock most of us. It's the way they carried that violence into the prison itself. Some became criminal masterminds behind bars, running gangs, orchestrating murders, and directing drug empires as if the steel bars were merely window dressing. Others exuded a quiet, calculated menace, manipulating both inmates and staff like pieces on a chessboard. Consider the prisoner who turned a routine meal delivery into a full-scale hostage crisis, or the inmate whose mere presence sparked riots that left entire facilities on lockdown for days. There are stories of convicts who escaped not once, but multiple times, taunting authorities and proving that no wall was high enough, no lock secure enough. The guards who face these people aren't rookies. They're trained, armed, and supported by layers of security technology. Yet many admit that certain inmates can make a seasoned officer's blood run cold with just a stare. It's a psychological battle as much as a physical one, a daily test of nerves where one wrong move can cost a life. Tonight, we're stepping inside that world. We'll reveal 10 prisoners so infamous that their names became whispered warnings. You'll hear about the serial killer whose cell became a command center for chaos, the cartel leader who controlled an army from solitary confinement, and the quiet manipulator who turned guards into pawns without ever lifting a weapon. These aren't just tales of crime. They're windows into the darkest corners of human behavior. Each story raises uncomfortable questions. How does someone become so feared that even a maximum security system can't contain their influence? What does it take to survive a place where the most dangerous predator isn't on the outside, but in the cell next door? As we count down these 10 infamous prisoners, you'll discover that fear isn't always loud or obvious. Sometimes it's a whisper behind the bars, a sudden silence in the cafeteria, or a guard's instinct to keep a hand near the alarm button. Lock the doors, dim the lights, and prepare yourself for a journey behind the world's toughest walls, where the real danger isn't the prison itself, but the people who rule it from within. The first name on this chilling list belongs to a man whose reputation still echoes through maximum security blocks: Charles Manson. Though convicted for orchestrating the infamous Tate LaBianca murders in 1969, Manson never personally wielded the weapons. Instead, his hypnotic control over his followers revealed a far more disturbing power: manipulation. Inside prison, that same influence kept guards uneasy. Even behind bars, he received thousands of letters, and whispers spread that he could still command acts of violence with a mere word. Guards reported that his piercing stare felt like he was reading thoughts, an unnerving presence that needed no weapon. From psychological menace, we shift to sheer brutality with Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker. Convicted of a string of murders and assaults across California, Ramirez entered San Quentin already infamous for his satanic imagery and remorseless attitude. Prison officers recounted how he seemed to relish the fear his reputation inspired. His chilling grin during court appearances wasn't an act. Inside the prison walls, that same dark charisma lingered. Inmates avoided eye contact. Guards doubled patrols when he was moved between cells, knowing his violent impulses could ignite without warning. Then there's Robert Maudsley, often called the Hannibal Lecter of Britain. Maudsley began his killing spree in the outside world, but became most feared inside. While incarcerated, he murdered multiple fellow inmates, earning a reputation so severe that authorities eventually confined him to a specially constructed glass-fronted cell beneath Wakefield Prison, nicknamed the Glass Cage. Even seasoned officers hesitated to approach, fully aware he had nothing to lose and a methodical patience that made every encounter tense. Crossing to Latin America, Pablo Escobar turned incarceration into a business opportunity. When Colombian authorities tried to cage the world's most notorious drug lord, he built his own luxury prison, La Catedral. Inside, Escobar lived like royalty, complete with a soccer field and nightclub, while continuing to orchestrate cartel operations. His wealth allowed him to bribe guards, smuggle in weapons, and even order killings from within. The message to staff and rival inmates was clear. Walls meant nothing to the man who once controlled 80% of the world's cocaine trade. Another figure whose legend haunts prison corridors is Thomas Silverstein, long considered one of America's most dangerous federal inmates. Responsible for multiple killings inside prison, including the brutal murder of a corrections officer, Silverstein spent decades in solitary confinement. Yet guards admitted he remained a constant psychological weight, proof that a single person could challenge the authority of an entire system. His life became a case study in how extreme isolation both contains and fuels violent resolve. In Japan, Issei Sagawa, though technically not a mass killer, instilled fear for different reasons. After committing a gruesome act of cannibalism in Paris, legal loopholes allowed him to avoid long-term imprisonment in France. When he returned to Japan, the knowledge of his crime made fellow detainees and staff recoil. Though often quiet and polite, his mere presence carried a horror that no locked door could erase. Back in the United States, Albert Woodfox, of the Angola Three, spent over 4 decades in solitary confinement after being accused of killing a prison guard. Whether or not the charge was justified, the impact was undeniable. The longest period of isolation in U.S. history turned Woodfox into a symbol of defiance. Guards spoke of an intense calm around him, the kind that made officers hyper-alert. He became a rallying figure for prisoners' rights, but inside those concrete walls, he remained a man whose quiet endurance unsettled everyone. We cannot ignore Eileen Wuornos, one of the rare female serial killers whose violent past followed her into the Florida prison system. Known for killing multiple men while working as a hitchhiking sex worker, Wuornos carried an unpredictable edge. Guards recounted sudden mood swings, moments of eerie calm shattered by explosive rage. Even seasoned officers admitted she could turn a routine cell check into a confrontation with no warning. From gang leaders to solitary specters, these prisoners transformed incarceration into a stage for terror. Whether through psychological control, relentless violence, or sheer notoriety, they forced the people around them, guards and fellow inmates alike, to confront fear on a daily basis. And as we move further down this list, the stories grow even more unsettling, proving that the most secure facility can still tremble in the shadow of a single human being. Some prisoners don't just survive behind bars, they rule them. These are the masterminds who turned confinement into a throne room, bending both fellow inmates and even staff to their will. Consider Frank Lucas, the Harlem drug kingpin whose empire once rivaled that of multinational corporations. Even after his arrest, Lucas retained powerful street connections. Inside federal prison, he allegedly maintained a steady income stream and influence that reached beyond the razor wire. Guards were careful around him, knowing his quiet conversations could mean trouble brewing on the outside. For many inmates, he wasn't just another prisoner. He was a living reminder that true power can operate from any cell. Then there's Whitey Bulger, the Boston mob boss who spent years on the run before capture. When finally locked away, Bulger's mere presence carried decades of bloody reputation. Other inmates either wanted him as an ally or avoided him completely, aware that betrayal, even a perceived slight, could invite deadly retaliation. The guards, too, knew his long reach. Rumors persisted that he could order hits, even while under the strictest watch, and tragically, his life ended in a brutal prison assault, proof that his enemies never forgot. In Mexico, El Chapo Guzman became the ultimate example of criminal influence behind bars. Despite being placed in high-security facilities, he orchestrated not one, but two audacious escapes, including a mile-long tunnel dug directly into his shower stall. His ability to bribe officials and maintain control over the Sinaloa cartel terrified guards. Every time a door clanged shut, officers wondered if it would hold against the billions of dollars and ruthless operatives at El Chapo's command. Sometimes, control is quieter, but no less chilling. Edmund Kemper, the towering co-ed killer, turned his intelligence into a weapon of manipulation. Standing 6 feet 9 inches, with an IQ measured at genius level, Kemper became a trusted presence in California's prison system, recording hundreds of audiobooks for the blind. But guards never forgot the grisly murders that brought him there. His articulate, calm demeanor masked a man who once described his killings with clinical detail. It was the contrast, the courteous giant who could casually recount horror, that kept staff perpetually uneasy. Another figure whose psychological grip was legendary is George Machine Gun Kelly. During the early 20th century, Kelly's name alone sent shivers through law enforcement. After his arrest for kidnapping, he was sent to Alcatraz, where guards treated him with a mixture of caution and curiosity. Though he eventually mellowed, his legend as a violent gangster ensured that both inmates and staff regarded him as someone capable of sudden, deadly action. And we cannot forget Stanley Tookie Williams, co-founder of the Crips. Even while serving life sentences, Tookie's reputation as a street warrior gave him instant authority among younger gang members behind bars. Though he later sought redemption through anti-gang activism and children's books, early in his incarceration, guards approached him warily, aware that one word from him could ignite a full-scale gang conflict within the prison walls. Each of these men illustrates a truth that keeps wardens awake at night. Real power inside a prison doesn't always come from weapons or riots. Sometimes it's the quiet phone call, the coded letter, or a subtle glance across the yard. Guards know that influence can be more dangerous than brute force. A single order whispered through the bars can spark violence miles away. What makes these prisoners especially terrifying is their ability to erase the boundaries between the inside and outside worlds. They exploit weaknesses in security, corrupt officials, and create networks that operate like multinational businesses. For the staff assigned to monitor them, every shift is a test of vigilance. For fellow inmates, aligning with or crossing such figures can mean the difference between protection and certain death. As our list continues, the stories grow darker. From calculated manipulators to audacious escape artists, these prisoners prove that a steel door is no match for ambition or fear. Their names remain warnings whispered in cell blocks across the world. Reminders that sometimes the most dangerous person in a prison is the one who appears completely in control. The tension only deepens when we move to those whose reputations were built not just on influence, but on the chaos they unleashed within the walls meant to contain them. These are the inmates whose audacity shattered the illusion of security and turned prison yards into battlegrounds. One of the most brazen was Richard Matt, whose escape from Clinton Correctional Facility in New York in 2015 became a global headline. Along with fellow inmate David Sweat, Matt used power tools to cut through steel, slithered through a maze of pipes, and emerged into freedom. The fact that guards failed to notice the noise of their nightly cutting sessions for weeks exposed glaring vulnerabilities. For staff, it was a nightmare. The realization that a determined mind could exploit any oversight and outwit even the tightest security. During the manhunt that followed, every clanging sound behind prison doors carried a new edge of fear. Then there's Frank Abagnale Jr., the con artist whose life inspired Catch Me If You Can. While his crimes were mostly non-violent, His talent for deception terrified prison officials. He escaped custody multiple times using nothing but charm, quick thinking, and forged documents. Abagnale's brilliance forced correctional systems to rethink protocols, proving that danger isn't always about brute force. Sometimes it's about the to outsmart every safeguard. In South America, the name La Reina del Pacífico, Sandra Ávila Beltrán, the Queen of the Pacific, commanded fear beyond her drug trafficking empire. Even in custody, she was suspected of quietly coordinating cartel movements. Authorities frequently transferred her between facilities to break potential networks, yet whispers persisted that she maintained lines of communication impossible to trace. For guards, her polite demeanor masked the possibility of silent retribution for any perceived disrespect. A story of almost mythical daring belongs to Alfred George Hines, often called Houdini Hines. Convicted of armed robbery in the UK, he escaped 3 high-security prisons using forged documents, hidden tools, and sheer nerve. Each time he was recaptured, he escaped again, embarrassing the British penal system and proving that persistence could rival any lock. Prison officers who guarded him later admitted to a lingering anxiety, aware that no set of keys felt safe when Hines was nearby. Riots can turn an entire prison into a war zone, and few illustrate that chaos better than the Attica prison uprising of 1971. While no single inmate caused the revolt, certain ringleaders emerged as focal points of both inspiration and terror. Hostage situations, fires, and gunfire left officers permanently scarred by the realization that order could collapse in minutes. The names of those who led the charge became cautionary legends, reminding guards everywhere that collective fury can overpower even the best-laid security plans. From escapes to violent confrontations, these incidents highlight the razor-thin line between control and catastrophe. Every prison official understands that a single moment of complacency can ignite a chain reaction. An inmate who notices a loose bolt, a staff member who looks away at the wrong second, a piece of contraband passed in a handshake. These infamous events have reshaped prison design, leading to motion sensors, advanced surveillance, and stricter guard rotations. Yet, even with modern technology, the memory of past failures keeps nerves on edge. Perhaps what unsettles most is the unpredictability. A calm, quiet cell block can transform into chaos without warning. An inmate with a record of good behavior might secretly be mapping out a route to freedom or rallying others for a riot. For the men and women working the gates, these stories serve as a grim reminder that danger often wears an ordinary face. These episodes of defiance and destruction show that a prison's greatest threat is not always the weapons smuggled inside, but the relentless human drive to break free. They leave behind not only scars on the system, but an enduring fear, a knowledge that somewhere in the next cell, someone might already be plotting the next impossible escape. Some prisoners leave a mark so deep that even after their deaths, their shadows linger in the corridors. Guards retire and inmates move on, yet the stories of these infamous figures continue to echo like whispers down dark hallways, shaping how prisons operate today and how society imagines life behind bars. Their impact goes beyond sensational headlines. Each one forced entire correctional systems to evolve, installing stronger locks, redesigning cells, tightening surveillance, and rewriting protocols for solitary confinement. After Charles Manson proved that influence could stretch far beyond a cell, prisons began restricting mail, monitoring visitors more closely, and tracking any hint of organized communication. El Chapo's escapes led to rapid upgrades in high-security facilities, from motion sensors under concrete floors to reinforced plumbing systems. Every incident became a hard-earned lesson written into policy. Yet policies alone cannot erase the fear these inmates inspired. Many guards who worked their blocks speak of sleepless nights years later. Some admit they would instinctively glance over their shoulder, even in retirement, as if the presence of a man like Richard Ramirez or Robert Maudsley could somehow follow them home. The psychological toll is as real as any physical injury. Prisons are built of steel and stone, but fear seeps through both. For fellow prisoners, the effect is equally profound. Some of these notorious inmates became dark legends, symbols of defiance or terror depending on the perspective. To a young inmate entering a maximum security yard, just hearing names like Whitey Bulger or Thomas Silverstein could trigger a mix of awe and dread. Stories about their cunning or violence travel faster than any official record, shaping hierarchies and alliances long after the original figures are gone. There is also a larger question that their legacies force us to confront. What creates someone capable of instilling such lasting fear? Is it innate brutality, a broken environment, or a mix of both? The answer is complex. Many began their paths with severe trauma or relentless poverty, yet countless others with similar hardships never turned violent. Understanding this gray area is key to preventing future tragedies, but it also means facing uncomfortable truths about society's failures outside the prison walls. Even as we look back, the danger isn't confined to history. New names are rising inside modern facilities, people whose cunning or ruthlessness could someday join this list. Technology may have advanced, but human ambition, desperation, and cruelty remain stubbornly timeless. For every high-tech camera or reinforced door, there is someone plotting how to outthink it. What remains most chilling is the idea that fear itself can be a form of power. These inmates didn't need to escape to dominate. Many ruled through reputation alone. A glance across a yard, a rumor passed from cell to cell, or a coded message in a letter could shift the balance of an entire prison. That invisible influence is harder to contain than any physical threat. As their stories circulate in documentaries, podcasts, and late-night conversations, they continue to capture the public imagination. Part of us is horrified. Another part is fascinated by the human capacity for both terror and survival. These prisoners remind us of the thin line between order and chaos, and how fragile that line becomes when a single individual refuses to be broken. So, as the final door clangs shut in this exploration, consider the unsettling truth. The world's most infamous prisoners may be locked away or long gone, but the fear they created never fully fades. It lingers in the minds of the guards who faced them, in the policies that still bear their names, and in the uneasy realization that somewhere, even now, another legend of terror may be quietly rising behind the next set of bars.